Alex Sanchez, what about Operation Community Shield, which targets gang members? What do you think should happen there?
Well, I think that we've seen the big failure of Operation Community Shield. You know, there's been over 10,000 people that have been arrested through these operations in our communities. What we've seen is that when they go after some of these assumed gang members and they don't live there in the address that they're going to, they arrest the family that's in that home anyways, if they're undocumented. So what we've seen is a big failure, because now what happened is that once you started deporting individuals that were involved in illegal activities, once they went to their countries were not prepared to receive all these individuals that were criminalized. On top of that, their records were sent with them as well, so they made them a target. These individuals rapidly got involved in the activities that were there in those countries. And that's what we have now, a big old problem in regards of how those governments are seeking U.S. Intelligence and policies to see how to combat those gangs. But as a result for that, there's been many human rights violations in the prison systems in those countries, but also in the streets. When you have vigilante groups going after these individuals, it has escalated the violence and the migration of youth who feel thought after. So you have many individuals coming back up, going into Mexico, coming into the United States, fleeing persecution because the governments are killing them. And that's creating more violence in different areas of the United States, because people are seeking shelter, but at the same time, you can't get a job because you're going to get arrested. You can't be driving because you're going to get stopped and you're going to get arrested. So many individuals just seek to see how they can make it be part of the underground economy in the United States, which is causing a big problem. So
and Alex, if you had to suggest one thing that President Obama could do without necessity of going before Congress in an executive fashion in terms of immigration, what would that be?
I think that we should stop this this persecution of immigrants, or so-called criminal immigrants, and really start investing in trying to see how we could force in foreign policy those governments to make conditions better to stop the flow of so many people leaving their families behind. If they focus on foreign policy and have those governments really stabilize their economy and stabilize their way of treating the people, and really create programs and incentives to have those governments really create employment for many of these people and stop the human rights violations, people will not seek to migrate and leave their families behind.
The massive protests that took place in May, we just have a minute with you left, Alex Sanchez, on the satellite. Where has that movement gone, May Day?
Well, we see that it hasn't moved forward as we wanted to. It went back to sleep, as we're saying. But through this Fast for Our Future and our participation in this hunger strike, we're trying to awaken. We're trying to get those big immigration agencies that are out there leading the immigration debate to really start looking at the local issues and what the efforts have been that have happened and had not stopped, to really take us into consideration and push our issues into a bigger policy. So we're not stopping. This is the beginning. After the fast, we said, you know, we march and now we vote. Well, now we voted, and we're going to continue marching to demand that people be legalized.
Janis Rosheuvel, what you think needs to happen right now?
I mean, I think first and foremost, it's what is happening in California with the fast. I think that is an amazing model for what needs to happen. We need to organize. You know, Obama said during his election night speech, this is not the change. This is the opportunity for the change. And I agree with that. I mean, I'm not a booster of his, but I agree that our responsibility is not to boost him. Our responsibility is to push him. Our responsibility is to organize. Our responsibility is to, you know, do nonviolent, militant, direct actions like the fast for the future that really sort of create the space for us to actually make the change that he has talked about and that we so desperately need in our communities. So I think that's what needs to happen. I think also, you know, Obama talks a lot about bipartisanship and working across the aisle, and there's really just one piece of legislation out there right now called the Child Citizen Protection Act. It's H.R. 1176. It basically asks for discretion to be restored to immigration judges. It doesn't take anybody off the deportation rolls. That's why it's an easy ask, and that's why it's something that can happen in a bipartisan way. And I think for him to, if he came out and said, support the CCPA and really... And what it does, what it does is ask for, you know, for example, if somebody comes before an immigration judge who has U.S. citizen children right now, an immigration judge is not able to really take that into account. An immigration judge is only able to take into account that what is their status? Do they have criminal convictions like Alex was talking about? What kind? There's a very narrow lens through which an immigration judge can see an individual's entire life. This legislation basically says, if I have U.S. citizen children, that should be something a judge should take into account before deporting me. I think that is a really easy ask, and something that, you know, he could very easily work to, you know, like bring forces together on across the aisle.
Janis Rosheuvel, I want to thank you for being with us, Executive Director of Families for Freedom, based here in New York, an organization that fights deportations, and Alex Sanchez, Executive Director and founding member of Unidos, a gang violence prevention and intervention program with offices in Los Angeles and El Salvador. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. When we come back, sports and resistance, or not. We'll speak with Etan Thomas of Washington Wizards. We'll also be joined by sports writer Dave Zirin. Stay with us.